Dad, if you're watching, I'm trying my best not to cry. In this very special Christmas episode, I'm going to be paying a tribute to my dad, because even though he may have passed away many, many years ago, he's still one of my favorite people in the world, and very recently, I found myself missing him so much. One of my dad's favorite time of the year was the Christmas season because of how invested he was in the celebration of the season and always ensured that he made provisions for everything we needed to make the season a memorable one. Nsala soup with pounded yam was his absolute favorite meal to enjoy, and the one way I can effectively pay tribute to him on this channel is by sharing this beautiful mouth-watering Nigerian recipe, especially because it was actually one of his favorite things to enjoy during the holiday season. Now, I already have an Nsala recipe video on this channel, but in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how my mom used to make it for him way back then, while I share with you some of the things that I remember very fondly about my dad. This episode is about paying tribute to my dad, so today you get to know this amazing man that actually still is one of my favorite people in the world. I love you, Dad, just in case you're watching this from the high heavens. So just in case you're wondering, Nsala soup is actually a soup that is native to the Igbo people, and it's a very popular soup in Nigeria. It's also popularly known as white soup, and there are two main reasons why my dad absolutely loved this soup. The very first one, of course, is because it was very quick and easy to make. And then the second one is it's packed, loaded with lots and lots of amazing local flavors. So let me walk you through all of the ingredients I'll be needing, and then we'll get started with cooking this very yummy, mouth-watering soup that was my dad's absolute delight. For this recipe, you'll be needing some yams, catfish, stockfish and dry fish, crayfish and Nsala spice, some fresh pepper, utazi and uziza leaves, knorr seasoning cubes, Cameroon pepper, and some salt to taste. If I were to describe Nsala soup in a few words, Nsala soup is pretty much like a very light white soup that is very spicy, and it has this very earthy local flavor. And one of the star ingredients of this soup is what we call ogiri Igbo in Igbo. That thing smells like shit. But trust me, when you put it inside the soup, it literally takes the aroma and the taste of the soup to a whole new level. Something else to note about Nsala is that different people actually can cook Nsala with either fish or meat. Some people cook with just chicken, some people cook with turkey, some people cook with fish, some people cook with all sorts of things like prawns, snails, whatever it is. But my dad always loved to enjoy his Nsala soup with just fresh fish. And then, just to give it some more life and crunch and yumminess, we also would add some stockfish and dry fish to the whole thing as well. So it was more like my dad always just loved fish in his Nsala soup, and that's what we're going to be doing today. First things first, I'm going to start by building my base. So to build up the base for the soup, I'm going to start with some water. But if you're using stock, you can actually use your meat stock as your liquid of choice, okay? Next up, I'm going to add the stockfish, the smoked dry fish, some fresh pepper. I'm adding some crayfish powder into the pot as well. And then I'm also going to be adding some Nsala soup spice that we bought at the market. In here, I'm also going to be adding a little bit of Cameroon pepper because we want this soup really spicy. And then, of course, some salt to taste. Before I allow this to cook up, I'm going to add my thickener of choice. I'm going to be using some yam pieces. About 3 or 4 pieces will just be fine. So I'll add that into the soup just so that it boils up with the soup. And then when it's soft, I'm just going to blend it with a blender and pour it back into the soup, and it will help thicken up the soup slightly, okay? I'm just going to cover that up, and then while this is cooking, I'm going to heat up the second burner, move this over there, then bring in another pot, and with this pot, I'm going to cook up the yam. So all of the yam pieces will just go in there. And then before I cover it up, I'm going to just season lightly with a little tiny bit of salt. Then we cover up. So while the base of the soup is cooking, I just want it to simmer gently for about 2 to 3 minutes. And while the yam is cooking as well, let me tell you some of my fondest memories about my dad. some fun facts that I want the world to know about my dad is my dad was actually a very super intelligent, smart man. I know this because he graduated with a first class in electrical engineering. And of course, he was very big on developing your brain to achieve things and was big on education. He was a super disciplinarian. My dad was a no-nonsense man. You can't do nonsense around him. And sometimes he brought us up with a little bit of a hard hand, but he was an amazing father because he was always there in terms of providing, in terms of spending quality time with us. He was just all-rounder. He had the balance between disciplinarian and nice. And I think that personally, now that I'm grown up into an adult, some of that disciplining was actually very important because it helped shape my formative years. Something else I actually also want to talk about my dad is my dad was an excellent dresser. If he was still alive, I know my dad would be coming out stepping in different nice outfits. One of his favorite outfits to wear or things to wear was his wide cut leg trousers back in the days. I don't know what they call it. But those very big trousers, and then he always liked to style his outfits. You will see him with his belt on, sometimes his sunshades, looking all pink, looking all nice, looking all amazing. And that's actually one thing I really loved about my dad. He never used to step out looking unfresh. He always loved to look good. Something else I remember fondly about my father was the fact that, I said this before, he was big on education. He actually gave us the best education, ensured that we had the best education growing up as children. And one thing I remember so well was some of our car rides to school and back from school. Anytime it was my dad picking us up from school, it gave me so much joy. Guys, let me tell you something. I was actually my dad's favorite child. Yes. And he never used to mince his words when he would anyone who cared to listen, he would tell them. And I think that's one of the reasons why I absolutely loved my father back then and still love him today. So the car rides to school, where we listen to the radio, we always listen to the news. I remember the car ride back from school one day where we heard about the death of a president of Nigeria at the time, and the whole country was so excited about it. I'm like, I remember that ride so well. We were just coming back from school. I don't want to mention the name of the president, but my dad started telling us stories about this president, and it was just really, really fun. And that's something that I remember. I remember all the times on a Sunday where we would go to somewhere in Festac town to buy suya. Suya was our thing to do. My dad and I would drive. I would always want to follow him, and then we'd drive all the way to Festac and then we'd buy lots of suya. We'd bring it back home, and then we'd all sit down as a family and just enjoy together. So that's another fun memory that I really love, that I really remember about my dad. Something else I fondly remember about my dad is my dad never used to come back home without buying us a treat. There was always something to look forward to. Whether it was something he bought from traffic, maybe like hard-boiled groundnuts, or those guinea fowl eggs, or sometimes whenever he really wanted to splurge, he would go to Mr. Biggs back then, Sweet Sensation. I remember all of our fun trips. Sometimes my dad was a club member at the Federal Palace Hotel, and then he would take us there swimming. One very beautiful one I will never forget was the day he took us somewhere. We had lunch on top of the water. We literally could see the water, and then we were all scared looking at the water because you could literally see the water from the openings from the floor. That's another thing we did together as a family. I remember he would take us to amusement park during the festive season. We would swim, we would ride the bouncing castles, and we'd do all of those fun stuff. And that's actually a memory, or memories, that I still hold on to as an adult. Another fun memory that I hold on to was when my dad made us all, that was actually the first time I ever watched this movie called The Sound of Music. My dad had raved so much about the movie, and eventually we all got to sit down in the parlor together as a family. I remember all 9 of us at the time, because we're 7 children, then my mom and my dad, and we sat down and we watched The Sound of Music. And I tell you that everything he raved about was actually true, because I have watched that movie over a dozen times since the first time I watched it with my dad and my brothers and sisters and my mom as well. His favorite snack to enjoy, I would never forget this one, is usually a cold bottle of Coca-Cola and this biscuit called Okim biscuits. If you were born way back then, you know what I'm talking about. You know, Okim biscuit usually comes in a round form, and then there's another one in a rectangular form. My dad loved the round one because he always says that the round one didn't have a lot of sugar. But whatever. Yeah, so I remember very well that that was actually his favorite snack. During the festive season, my dad always ensured that it was a tradition. We would never used to eat anything that was not live chicken. So my mom would go to the market, she'd buy a lot of live chicken, she would kill it there, bring it back home, and then she would make rice and stew with salad. We make chin-chin, we made like buns and some nice little snacks that we usually would enjoy, and we'd just sit down together as a family and enjoy a really good Christmas lunch. My dad was not really a big spiritual person per se, but he attended Anglican church. I think it was St. Stephen's at the time. But a few years before he passed, he transitioned into attending MFM, that's Mountain of Fire, and then that's before he passed away. So, but he wasn't really a very spiritual man, but he was a disciplinarian who really liked the fine things of life and did everything he could to ensure that he was always there for his family. During his last days, before he passed away, I remember that I never used to miss a hospital visit. My dad was in the hospital for over a month, and all through that time, I literally always would go to the hospital with my mom. It was something I loved to do because I loved to be with my dad. Remember, I said I was his favorite child for whatever reason, and I actually really loved to be with my dad. And I remember I always wanted to follow my mom to the hospital. Whether it was convenient, I would cry, and then she would always let me go. But guess what? The morning that my dad passed, it was a Saturday morning. I had woken up and went to my mom's room to find out what time we were going to leave for the hospital. And then I got to the room and she had already gone. I didn't even know. I'm not even so sure why till this day my mom left earlier than normal. But by the time I got to her room, she had already left for the hospital. Little did I know that I was never going to see my dad again. And I remember her coming back home around 2:00 in the afternoon, and she was all sad, her eyes all red. She was crying terribly, and immediately, she didn't even have to mention it. Immediately, I knew that something had happened. And then she eventually told us what happened, and guys, okay, I'm getting emotional. This was a long time ago, though. And then she told us what happened, and yeah, my dad had passed. That was quite intense. Okay. Yeah, so I never got to see my dad again, and it hurt me so bad that on the day he died, for whatever reason, I wasn't there. I don't know if life helped me by ensuring that I wasn't there because I didn't know how I was going to handle it, but I wasn't there, and that hurt me so terribly. And his passing was something that got to me personally, again, because I was always so fond of my dad. His favorite name to call me then was Bundo. So my full name, my Igbo name is Chibundo, which is God is shelter. And my dad would always call me Bundo, Bundo. Anytime my dad called me Bundo, just know that he was happy with me. But if he calls me Chibu, just know he was mad at me. But he would always say Bundo, Bundo, and that was his favorite thing to call me. And when I heard that he had died, like it was a shocker. It was really a shocker, and I couldn't bring myself to attend his burial because I couldn't see myself looking at my dad lifeless. I didn't attend my father's burial, but I still have so many beautiful memories of him. I still hold it so dearly. And now when I see people who have fathers, maybe I see a father and his daughter going out on trips and doing stuff, and even when I'm watching a movie and maybe a father and a daughter are having their father and daughter dance, I literally cry, even till this day. I literally cry. And one thing that I wish so much for is, even though, yes, I have had the opportunity to have fathers in a lot of other people, but I really wish I had my father, like, still alive, to see the lady that I am today. A lot of my strengths, a lot of my abilities, a lot of things that I do, are actually things that I used to see in him. I'm very business savvy because my dad was business savvy. He was very strong. He was smart. He was a go-getter. And all of those attributes are attributes that I see in myself. And even though he has passed, I think that a part of him still lives in me. And I thought to do this video because I really wanted to say something really, I never talk about my dad, and I really wanted to just say something really nice about him. And Dad, if you're watching, I'm trying my best not to cry. But I really wish you were still on earth, and I really wish you were still here to see the lady that I have become, who I am today. I know you'll be proud of me. Thank you for all of the years that you were here and everything that you did to make our lives so beautiful. I love you, and I hope to see you again soon. Okay guys, let's get right back into the food, okay? Because that's why we're here. Once the base has simmered for some minutes and the yams are fully cooked, scoop out the yam in a blender and blend until it is fully pureed, then set it off to the side. Meanwhile, add the ogiribo, which is also known as fermented locust beans. Knorr seasoning cubes was always my mom's seasoning of choice, so I'm adding that into the pot along with some salt as well, and that's all of the seasonings that I'll be using for this soup. Mix everything together to combine, then leave this to simmer for another 3 minutes before adding the fish pieces into the stock. Now, the head of the fish was my dad's absolute favorite part of the fish, and that's why I'm going to be adding it at this point, okay? I'll also be adding the blended yam, and this will just help thicken up the soup slightly. You know that nsala soup is not a very thick soup, but it just has a little thickness, and this yam is going to help us achieve that. Afterwards, just cover the pot and leave this to cook for another 5 to 6 or 7 minutes, or until the thickener has dissolved nicely into the base and then the fish is also nice and tender. Finally, to add some much needed freshness and life to the soup, I'm going to be adding some shredded utazi leaves and some uziza leaves as well. These would also help lend a depth of flavor to the soup as well. Mix it in gently into the soup, being very careful not to break up the fish. Then cover the pot one final time and allow this to cook for a final 1 minute. And that's pretty much how my mom used to make ofe nsala for my dad. Now, freshly made pounded yam was my dad's favorite accompaniment to enjoy with his ofe nsala. So I boiled up the yams so they were nice and soft. And then I'm just going to use this mortar and pestle that I got from my last trip to Ghana to just pound it until it is nice and well pounded. And that's the yam all pounded. All I'll do now is just mold it up in nylons just so that they are nice and cute, and then I'll proceed to serve the soup and the nsala just like my mom used to serve it for my dad back then. So if I were to make my dad a pot of his favorite soup in the world, this is exactly how I'm going to make it. I really love the aroma, the smell, the taste, everything just works perfectly. I'm going to dish myself some on a plate real quick, and then we can give it a taste test. I know that my dad is going to be super duper proud of me. Well, if he was going to have a taste of this, he will in heaven. Okay, time for the taste test. Smells amazing. I can already tell it's going to taste amazing because this is not the first time I'm going to be making this recipe. He will definitely not approve of me using a fork to taste it, but Dad, pardon your girl, okay? Okay, so just a little bit of that. It smells amazing, guys, and trust me, if you are a big fan of white soup or you just want to try it out for the very first time, this holiday season is definitely the perfect time to try it out, as it is very warm, comforting, nourishing. And trust me, I tell you that everyone is absolutely going to love it. Okay? Like, it hits all the right spots. And I'm not even exaggerating. There is a reason this soup is my dad's absolute favorite. And I'm reliving the moment all over again. For those of you who still have your dad alive on the earth, please and please cherish every moment with them. Love them. This Christmas season is the perfect time to express your love and your gratitude to them, especially if they've been an absolutely good father, or they've played their role as a father in your life excellently well. And if they have not, this is still the perfect time to extend some grace and some love to them as well. Because trust me, some of us will do anything to have our fathers celebrate this season with us here on this earth, but it's all right. So Show your dad some love this season. Send them some grace, send them some love. Do something thoughtful that you know they would definitely love and appreciate. And that's all I have for you guys for today. From the beautiful memories that I have of my father and myself, I'm wishing you all a Merry Christmas and a beautiful New Year in advance.